Hey, sorry, I was busy researching what I needed to do tonight for this meeting, and I almost missed it. I looked up and it was 1 minute to log in. Now I can't find my agenda. Welcome everybody to the September 14th Toastmasters meeting. I am definitely scrambling for my agenda. I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to have to ask Lloyd, who is our Toastmaster tonight?
Our Toastmaster tonight is Steve Schwind.
Steve. Please welcome Steve as our Toastmaster for the evening.
Thank you so much. It appears as we will dispense with the flag salute tonight since we don't have one. I was just looking around to see if I could find one out here in sunny Lake Chelan. I apologize for the background noise, etc. I'm sitting behind Starbucks in Lake Chelan, and I thought it was going to be really great, but maybe it's because everybody's pulling into Safeway for dinner. I seem to have plenty of background noise. Hopefully it's not going to be too distracting. We've done well tonight in getting organized for our meeting. Lloyd Smith will be taking Kathleen McNulty's place. And we have two speakers, and everything else looks great. We do have a guest we discovered. Rachel, welcome to Toastmasters. Is this your first visit?
Yes, it is. I'm just checking it out.
Great. Well, we'd love to have you come and check it out as much as you'd like, and then we'll nab you at some point down the road.
Thanks,
So thanks
Steve.
for joining us. At this point, I will turn the meeting over to our general evaluator who will explain the next steps of our meeting.
Okay.
Lloyd Smith.
Thank you, Steve. Oops, wait a minute here. There we go. Since we do have a guest, when you're introducing your duties, make sure you explain what's going on so Rachel isn't left puzzled or thinking we're demented or something like that, okay? So anyway, Rachel, Toastmasters thinks evaluation is extremely important. There's no point in practicing something unless you find out how well you've practiced it, and that's what the function of evaluation is. Tonight we have two prepared speeches, and the evaluator for Mary Cyree's speech is Ron Slaybaugh. So Ron, would you like to explain what you're going to be doing tonight, please?
Sure. Well, as Lloyd mentioned, I will be evaluating Mary's speech and providing her feedback in the end. Mary is going to have a 5 to 7 minute speech based on the outcome of her journal keeping over the last 3 weeks. Journaling includes noting both positive and negative moments, successes, efforts, and 3 things for which Mary is grateful. So the speech title is How Much is Too Much? Back to you.
Okay, thank you, Ron. The evaluator for Jackie Graybill's speech is Pat Whitfield. So Pat, if you would explain.
Yes, happily. I will be evaluating Jackie. She is giving a speech about managing a difficult audience. Regretfully, I don't have a title for her speech, so maybe she could share that. You're muted, Jackie. And her speech will be 10 to 15 minutes. So we should certainly get an earful. I think you will really enjoy it. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. We also have a timer tonight. Rachel, timing is very important in Toastmasters. You've probably been to a number of meetings where people don't understand that, and everybody sits there and stews. Toastmasters runs according to a schedule, and so our timer this evening, replacing Leanne McCamey, who's not here, is Joyce. So Joyce, if you'd talk about that, please.
Oh, nice to meet you, Rachel. I hope you have a good time tonight. I am the timer. I have my phone and I use it as a timer. When I do this, there are certain times that I have to keep track of. For instance, Mary's speech, is it 5 to 7, Mary? Okay, wonderful. When the 5 minute mark comes around, this is my marker. Everyone loves it. At the 5 minute mark, we have the green machine. At the 6 minute mark, we have mellow yellow. Then at 7, we have big red. As for Jackie's speech, we have a special time I believe at 13 minutes, we go green. 14 minutes, we go yellow. 15 minutes, we go red. As for the table topics, which we love to have after the speeches, after, wrong one, I'm going colorblind. I blame the smoke. After 2 minutes, we go with the green roll. After 2 minutes and 30 seconds, mellow yellow. And after 3, raise the red roll. I apologize. That was the individual evaluations 2 to 3. Icebreaker, we will not have. Oh boy. Table topics.
Table topics, yeah.
I am so sorry. 1 minute green, 2, okay, 1.5 yellow, 2 red. I'll hush now.
Okay.
Sorry. Thank you very much.
We have a grammarian for the meeting, and I'm sure Dean is crushed that he's no longer the most distant member of the Cascade Speakeasy coming from Winthrop, because Jackie has you beat by several thousand miles.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am, especially since she probably doesn't have to wallow in smoke so thick you can cut it and stack it in blocks. But yes, I am the grammarian. The role of the grammarian is to listen for exceptional uses of the English language as well as certain abuses, and also introduce the word of the day. And with the word of the day, everyone is encouraged to use the word. It's our effort to increase our vocabulary, which is a useful skill. And I will keep track of who all uses the word of the day. Today, it's related to the theme of our meeting, which is the best of times and the worst of times. The word of the day is duality. As hinted by the word dual within it, duality refers to having two parts, often with opposite meanings, like the duality of good and evil. For example, the protest captured the duality of the political mood in Russia ahead of Putin's inauguration on Monday to a fourth term. I believe that was a couple-year-old article that was referring to the fact that Putin was reelected and yet there was demonstrations in opposition to it out in the streets. Coming soon to a place near you. With that, I'll turn the meeting back to Lloyd.
Okay, thank you, Dean. At the end of the evaluations this evening, I'll evaluate the meeting as a whole. Right now, I will turn it back over to our Toastmaster, Steve.
Lloyd, do we want to talk about the counter?
Oh, yep, probably so, Vicki, since it's you. Sorry about that. You're still here? Sorry.
That's okay. My role as the counter is to listen to everyone's speeches and see if there are any filler words such as like, so. And as you'll notice, if you listen to certain interviews on TV, sometimes those are filled with those filler words. And so it's just something that we like to watch. And then Rachel, I also want you to let you know that we're not doing jazz hands. What this is it's sign language for clapping, because if we were live, we would all be clapping when we change to the next person. So we're not doing jazz hands, we're clapping. Back to you, Lloyd.
Okay, thank you, Vicki. Now I will turn the meeting back over to our Toastmaster, Steve Schwind, who will introduce the speakers.
Thank you, Lloyd. Tonight, Mary Syrie is going to be our first speaker. For the past 3 weeks, Mary has been keeping a journal to track her ups and downs and her gratitudes. In her speech tonight, she will summarize the effect journaling has had on her mood in these pandemic, riotous, smoky, and political times. Please join me in welcoming Mary as she tells us how much is too much.
After my last speech 3 weeks ago, I went on the hunt for my next project. Level 3 has a rich trove of electrics that we can choose from. It's a lot like the old competent communicator manual. There's descriptive language, vocal variety, connect with storytelling, and even inspire your audience. But one caught my eye for these times. Focus on the positive. I've been feeling a certain ennui, a weariness and discontent that's been creeping into my life. And this just seemed like a timely and a healthy project. In accordance with the project outline, I've kept a journal for 3 weeks, entering negative and positive moments, how I felt, and my gratitudes. This is my journal. It's a little Toastmaster International gift that I got a while ago. And I just want to read one of my gratitudes, and this is from 3 weeks ago today. Here it is. I am grateful for no wildfires and air is clear. 3 weeks ago. How quickly life changes in 3 weeks or a few hours or sadly in 15 minutes. Fellow Toastmasters, honored guest, journaling has provided time for me to identify the things that get me down and then analyze those that I can change, that I can affect. One overarching activity in particular was the root cause of much of my sadness lately, and that is too much internet. There are 3 activities that I've been doing that really led me to this conclusion. They funneled down to too much time on the you-know-what. The first one is checking metrics. I've been spending a lot of time obsessing over the COVID-19 statistics. How many cases do we have in Chelan County and Douglas County? How come Grant County has more cases, fewer people? They're at level 2, we're at level 1. Just gets me wound up. And then there's a new distraction. For the past week, I've been checking on air quality and the DNR fire and smoke maps. So I'm hitting these sites several times a day, the air quality especially. What is it now? How much worse are the Tri-Cities than we are? How fast is the plume coming in from Oregon? There was one day, I think Saturday morning, Seattle had worse air quality than we did. And I was a little offended by that. I mean, we're the ones who are having a bad time. The fires are here. I watched it all day long and finally Seattle got better, we got worse. I actually felt vindicated that, yeah, we're at the top of the totem pole for smoke now. It's where we belong. Pity us, please. You know, when I wrote that down, it becomes apparent how wrong that is. There's just something going wrong. It was the first indicator, well, the most recent indicator that I had to get away from some of these metrics. The second one is news feeds. We've been talking about that a little bit at the beginning of this meeting. There's a presidential politics, and they're very interesting this year. So I have accumulated a list of about 10 news sites, and I want to see the most far right all the way to the most far left of the news feeds, just to see what everyone's saying and kind of weigh it out. In addition to CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Seattle PI, Wenatchee World. I'm looking at these news sites, hoping for a new headline or hoping for a story that I can agree with and make me feel better. But mostly it's just disappointment and isn't helpful. And the third one that actually is the biggest one for me is Facebook. And I've actually known this for a few months, that Facebook has become toxic. It used to be the happy place to go to see pictures of your friends and your family and see what they're doing lately. But lately it's become a place for people to spew out their hatred, their conspiracy theories, and just a lot of ugliness is there. So where does this all lead me? Well, less time on the internet. Certainly you can affect that. This is something you can do something about. And although there is a duality between keeping informed and having so much information that it's harmful. So I've been trying to find a balance there. With the smoke, I check it in the morning, what that index is. If I'm curious, I just look out the window and I can see what's going on. With the news, I've gone back to the old adage from years ago before the internet. We watched the news once a day and we got everything we needed. And Facebook, I've whacked out a lot of friends. I've gotten rid of a lot of groups, and I'm just using self-control to look at it, not even once a day. Just back off. Now, the moral of the story here, if something is making you feel bad, you have to quit doing it. And journaling really helped me identify those things and pushed me along the way to stop such behavior. Before the meeting started, I was downstairs watching the news with my husband, and I saw all the sadness that's going on in the community of Sumner, with the fires still going on, with the damage that's been done. And it is hard to keep your spirits up. It's something that really one has to work on. So I'm trying to replace those negatives with some positive, like reading a good book, writing letters, and delivering a Toastmasters speech. Keep up the good work, folks. See you next week for a good time at Toastmasters. Thanks.
Thank you, Mary. Great speech. Timer, do we have a minute on the clock? Share your thoughts with Mary as to how the speech has impacted you. Rachel, if you wish, you can do that as well. You can probably are familiar with Zoom. Up in the top right corner of her image is the three little dots, and you can click on her chat button if you want and just make comments to her. Not mandatory by any means.
1 minute started.
Thank you.
If I didn't know any better, I'd say that smoke looks like fog. London fog. That's my favorite tea. One minute up.
Thank you. Hopefully everybody's got their sharing wrapped up. Next, we have Jackie Graybill, who's going to speak with us tonight. A Hop Across the Pond is the title of her speech. It was just a hop across the pond. Tonight we're going to discover the world or the word and the mantra that made Jackie's trip possible. Join us tonight in hearing about a hop across the pond with Jackie Graybill.
I wonder how many of you are like Vicky and me in that you pick a word at the beginning of the year. How many people pick a word that they want to describe their year? Vicky and me. Okay. We got it, Vicky. I remember her talking about that in the speech earlier this year, or maybe it was in December. My word for last year was freedom, the perfect word to escape my abusive marriage. through a divorce. Wonderful. This year, my word is simplicity. Actually, even more than that, simplify. Simplify in 2020. The reason that word was important for me was I wanted to simplify my life, meaning that I wanted to own fewer things. And that came in really handy for when I decided that I was going to hop across the pond. Has anyone experienced downsizing before? You're going to move to another city, maybe another country. I was going to downsize, and I was going to have an app help me with that. The app is called Scannable. Now, what Scannable does is you position your phone right over the document, and it finds the edges, and it takes the document. You can add a ton of pictures to your document, and it will turn it into a PDF. And it was so gratifying to me to have all these papers piled up to go to the shredder. But you know what the most gratifying one to send to the shred pile was? My divorce papers. Yes! And there's just something about getting rid of all these things that makes you feel a little more free. It's fantastic. I simplified my life. In fact, I simplified it so much that all I had with me for my hop across the pond was 2 pieces of checked-in luggage, 50 pounds each, a roller bag that was maybe close to 50 pounds because it had all my books in it that I hadn't downsized, and a shoulder bag. And then I left at home a tote and a half of things that I did not have time to digitize. All my photos, my journals, and that's it. And I felt so free. So the word simplify helped me to get ready. There was an important mantra, though, that was really pivotal as I was going through the whole process. And Vicki says, I wish I could pack that light. We'll have to talk, Vicki. I'll have to, well, do you know Marie Kondo? Are you a Marie Kondo fan, Vicki? Yeah, yep. Okay. I was gonna say, if you're not, I'll have to send you that book and the messages. And Joyce
I'm
is saying
wondering
here.
if you've had this same experience or not. And then Lloyd, how about you? Have you? Yeah. What do you think?
That is a great question, Pat. And I'm curious how many of you are familiar with Marie Kondo and have downsized with her method? Oh, okay. That looks like about half. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? Thank you so much for bringing that up, Pat. I am going to put Marie Kondo's book in the chat after my speech, and everybody can go grab her stuff because it is phenomenal. It is completely life-changing. Step 1, I had simplified. But step 2, there was all the red tape I had to work through. Getting a visa is hard, people. Has anybody ever gotten a visa before? Yes, Pat, Dean, yes, so you know how hard it is. And when you're on a deadline, that makes things even more difficult. But I knew in my bones that a couple things were right for me. Anyone who was here before we started might have heard me talk about my Zoom meeting with my professor where she talked about the program. And it literally felt like every part of my body was buzzing. And I was thinking, yes, 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 yes. Yes, I want to be a part of this program. Yes, I didn't think I wanted to live in Worcester in the UK, but I do. I need to be a part of this program. And the next day I started looking at flights and I saw one through Vancouver. And I thought, this is great, $205. I'm going to fly nonstop. This is going to be fabulous. Until they changed it and it wasn't nonstop. Okay. And then I started hearing about the border. Has anybody tried to go to Canada lately? Yeah. So I ended up having to get another flight from Delta to go from Seattle into Vancouver. And I have a speaking coach, Chris. And Chris was saying this to me the whole time. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. They're going to turn you away. They're going to send you away. You're going to have to go back. And I kept telling Chris, this is my mantra. When anything would make me anxious, I would go back to that place where I knew in my bones I was supposed to be there. And I knew I was supposed to be on this flight on the 5th. And I would say, everything is falling into place. You might want to write that down. Everything is falling into place. And at our weekly meetings, Chris would bring it up. Yeah, I just don't think you're going to get through. And I would say, Chris, everything is falling into place. And you know what? Everything started falling into place. I had to go and get a biometrics scan of my fingerprints and my photos to send off my passport and everything to New York. And it very well could have arrived after my flight. But I knew it wasn't going to because everything was falling into place. It came back. Came back on Wednesday. I was flying on Saturday. I had to wait for my student loan letter, but I knew everything is falling into place. It came on Thursday. And then came the biggest test of all. I was at SeaTac Airport. I was standing there with my parents, and the woman at Delta said, have you had a COVID test? And I said, well, a COVID test isn't required. Well, it's requiring me to put in a COVID test. I'm going to have to call somebody. I'm sorry. Would you hang on just a minute? And she was talking to somebody on the phone, and I looked at my parents who had driven me to Seattle, and they were getting nervous.
Well, don't you think that would have been the right thing to do, though, is knowing you're getting on a flight with a bunch of other people to have gone in there with the knowledge that you didn't have COVID?
That is a great thought, Ian. That is a great thought. I had gotten a COVID test 2 weeks before when I was feeling a little ill, and it was negative, and I hadn't been too exposed to anybody else. So that's why I felt okay doing that. But you bring up a really good thought, Ethan. I'm going to blame that on the fact it's 1:59. Ian, I know who you are, I promise. You know what? Next time I'm going on a flight, I think I will get a COVID test, just so I know that I'm not exposing anybody else to potentially COVID. I did have a really fancy schmancy Navy mask from Old Navy, though, that I was wearing the whole time. You'll be happy to know. We were at SeaTac. The lady's talking on the phone. I'm hearing this duality in my head. Chris is like, Jackie, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. And then the other part of my head is, everything is falling into place. Everything is falling into place. Are you sure he's not right? No, everything's falling into place. And then she said, guess what? Your bags have been sent all the way to Gatwick. You don't have to pay for them again. And I said, yes, suck it, Chris. And then at my next coaching session, I actually said that. We give a check-in every time, and I said, my check-in is called Suck It, Chris. And I gave Suck It, Chris as many times as I could. It could have easily gone the other way, but I knew in my heart that it was not going to go the other way. Now, here's the reason I believe that I was meant to be on that flight. I looked at other flights, nothing was right. I just knew I was supposed to be on that flight. The flight from Vancouver to Calgary. Before we get on, I hear a cute little British gal talking about how she is so anxiety ridden, and it just, oh, and this whole process. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm trying to be positive, lady. And even though you have a cool accent, so I put my music on. I was like, I'm not going to listen to this negativity because everything is falling into place. And then I got on the plane, and guess who I was sitting next to? I was sitting next to, her name ended up being Amy. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, just so you know, I have lots of anxiety when I fly. And I said, oh, tell me about that. So we talked about it. And I said, you know what? I just happen to have an app that has EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique is what it's called. And you tap on different parts of your body. And while you're saying certain things, and under your arm and on the top of your head, and what it does is it calms down your amygdala in your brain. So I said, I've got this on my app. Let's just do this. It's one particularly for flying. She said, okay. And then the gentleman next to her said, that's stupid. Do you think that stuff really works? And I said, do you want to listen to this in the headphones? And she said, yes. And then in the middle of the flight, she started hyperventilating and crying when we hit turbulence. She was just a hot mess. And I sat there rubbing her back, and I said, you know what? My mom just gave me these essential oils to go with me, and this one's called Valor. Here, smell a little bit of it. And she smelled a little bit of it, and she rubbed it on her wrists, and I was rubbing her back. And then she calmed down, and later she turned to me and she said, you know what? That wasn't nearly as bad as it usually is. And I knew that I was supposed to be on that flight for her. It's just another example of everything is falling into place.
Did you,
Even when I had to,
did you by any chance think about just buying the two of them a big stiff drink?
you know, it's funny that you say that, Dean, because the gentleman on the other side of her was from Poland, and he said, oh, all you need is vodka, just vodka. Later, she was like, that wasn't helping. So I tried to distract her from him, but she was on medication that would not allow her to drink. But that was mentioned. Thank you for that, Dean. That was a perspective shared by other people. I had to keep saying that mantra in my head when I got to Gatwick because I had to switch 3 trains, lugging all this 150 pounds of luggage with me. But you know what? The whole time I was saying, everything is falling into place. Everything is falling into place. And you know what? When I got to my beautiful little place, I knew that everything had indeed fallen into place. And I fell into my bed. So I invite you to use the mantra, everything is falling into place, no matter what is going on in your life. It really helps everything to fall into place. And I am happy to be a part of this group from a hop across the pond, as Pat put it, merry old England. Thank you.
Wasn't that just a lot of fun? Thank you, Jackie. That was entertaining and informative. I see the duality in your duality. Is that the word, Dean? Duality?
Indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, the duality of talking yourself down off of the cliff when fear and difficulties face you in the cycling world. Oh, 1 minute on the clock?
Okay, here we go.
For the comments. When we go cycling and we come up to 12% hills that are a mile long, we look at them, we say, love to climb hills. Love it. Just love it. Makes that hill go a little easier.
We're halfway through. And 1 minute.
I was just pondering that notion of duality a little more, and I was thinking, is it duality? Is it the insanity of sitting behind a Starbucks in Chelan to participate in a meeting, or just the commitment to be a Toastmaster? We are going to now journey into another fun part of our meeting, table topics. Ian Adams will lead us in table topics.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody. And thanks, Lloyd, again for the interesting theme of the night. I assume, Lloyd, that you'd come up with this. First question of the night is, actually, let me pull everybody back up so I can see who's here. The theme was, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. This is a phrase taken from a novel written by Charles Dickens called A Tale of Two Cities. And although I've never read that novel, I do really enjoy reading. In fact, I just finished up a pretty simple book titled Never Cry Wolf. I picked it up because I remember watching the movie as a kid and loving that movie and really loving the story. So I found that book, read it, enjoyed it. Like any other novel and book cross, the two are very different but very similar in many ways. So I'm waiting for the next title to strike some interest with me that I'm going to read. Vicky, can you tell us about a book you've recently read, and did you or did you not like it?
Thank you, Ian. Yes, I am reading all sorts of books now, and trying not to just read self-help and self-development type of books. And the most recent one that I read, let me see if I can find it. It is called Plan a Happy Life. Now, you would think this is a self-help book, and it's not really, though. The creator of Me and My Big Ideas, which is a planner, and this beginning of the year, I was really excited because I had bought a planner, and I was going to decorate it and put all of the things that I was going to do in it. And then March happened. And everything that I had written in it, the planner changed. But this book has more about looking at what makes you happy and what brings you joy. And I have really found that in these last few months, I have been doing things that have brought me joy and made me happy. And so that is what I took out of this latest book of Plan a Happy Life, is plan to do things that you enjoy. Mr. Table Topics Master. You're on mute.
Thank you. As I was preparing for this role tonight, I was thinking about this quote and trying to figure out how it related to me in a way that I could develop some questions that may be entertaining. And one of the ways it resonated with me was with its similarity to the fun scale. Now, some of you have probably heard of the fun scale, maybe not, but the fun scale I'm aware of has 3 levels: type 1 fun, type 2 fun, and type 3 fun. And this quote reminds me of type 2 fun, which is the type of fun that is not fun at all until after the event is over with. And then you reflect on it and you realize that there was some fun. Ron, can you tell us about a time that you were just miserable doing something, but under reflection, you decided that the event was actually pretty doggone fun?
Well, Ian, imagine everybody here might feel somewhat the same way that I do with that particular topic or that question. I mean, 2020, Lloyd's own opinion, really should just be canceled, and I agree with that. Where's the fun? I'm having a hard time thinking about any fun right now. But as you asked that question, one thing that came to mind, and being a kid from Leavenworth and some of the stories that I've heard you tell, you might be able to relate to this. When I was a bit younger, still in high school, our high school auto shop got talked into going to this mud bog competition at the local racetrack where all these mud boggers were. And we had to clean off all of these trucks and these Jeeps and these buggies after they got through the mud before they got back on the road to go back for their next turn. This is over in Western Washington. It was in the spring and it was cold and it was rainy, and a bunch of us are out there up to our knees in this slot, shivering, not necessarily having a good time at the time. I had to find somebody that would even man the hose, like who's going to go in there next. But at the end of the day, when we were all done with it and we got to warm up and get together and look at some of the cars and the Jeeps and the buggies that had gone through it, just the fact that we went through all of this together and struggled with that adversity together, it ended up being a pretty darn good time. It didn't seem like fun at the time. We were all wet and soaking and cold, but it ended up being fun, and it's something that, shoot, here I am 34 years later remembering it. So thank you, Ann.
Thanks, Ron. We don't have a whole lot of time tonight because of the multiple speeches, but I'm going to go ahead and ask one more question before I turn it back over to Steve. If you believe in the principles of yin and yang, everything has a balance. So my question tonight is for Pat. If the smoke that we're having is our yin, what's our yang?
Hang on, my assistant is blocking my hand movement so that I could unmute myself. So if the smoke is the yin, what is the yang? I think the yang is the belief that this too shall pass. You can see this orange orb up in the sky, somehow curtained by the smoke, but you know that the sun is there. And at night, there's the silver pearl in the sky that's just barely behind the smoke. So if the smoke is the yin, the yang is that this too shall pass, and soon we'll see blue skies and we'll see starry skies, and we can forget all of this crap. That's my yang.
Thanks, Pat. I loved it. I think we probably have time for one more. I did a little research on the Tale of Two Cities novel in preparation for this role tonight. And Dickinson wrote about two different cities. He wrote about Paris and London. Dean, if you had a free trip to one of those two cities, which one would you take and why?
You're muted, Dean.
Wow, that's like asking me which of my pets I love the most, because I would like to go to both cities. But given that I'm 2/3 of the way through watching the Tour de France and the wonderful terrain in France, right now I would have to pick Paris. And I would like to be there for the final stage of the Tour de France. But I'm really impressed every time I watch the tour, which we've done for 4 or 5 years now, at how beautiful the countryside is. And I would love to go there sometime and actually do a bit of riding myself. Certainly not as much as those guys do. They race over 100 miles a day for 21 days with only 2 rest days. At my stage in my life, I think it would take me 3 days to do a single race there without hurting myself. But hopefully someday we'll get there and we'll be able to do a little bike riding and see the countryside and also see parts of Europe and maybe get across the channel to see England.
Thanks, Dean. At this point, I'd like to go ahead and turn it back over to our Toastmaster, Steve. Steve, would you carry us on to the latter part of our meeting?
Thank you, Ian. Well done. I was just thinking if I'd have brought a coffee, a big carafe of coffee, I could have made a few bucks while I was sitting here. A lot of people don't realize that the smoke has yet again curtailed the opportunity for a business to have its doors open. I will now turn the meeting over to Lloyd to give us a summation of how our meeting has gone. Lloyd?
Thank you, Steve. Moving into the evaluation portion of the meeting now, we'll hear the speech evaluations first. So number one on that list is Ron Slaybaugh, who will be evaluating Mary's speech. Ron.
Thank you, Lloyd. When last few recent meetings, it seems that Jackie's been given an awful lot of speeches, but Mary certainly comes in a close second. And they're quality speeches, Mary. Me and everybody else, I think I can say from the reaction of the audience, enjoys these. This started off with a really good introduction, and I like that. In typical Mary fashion, with good facial expressions and hand gestures and such, you talked about how you selected this topic coming off of your last speech and kind of wrung your hands like choosing your next victim, choosing your next speech is how I interpreted it. And I thought that was pretty funny. You continued on with the introduction. And one thing that I liked, and I see this in some speeches, but not all, but it was effective in this one. You were probably about a minute or so into it when you concluded your introduction with reaching out to the fellow Toastmasters and guests and telling us a little bit more about what we were getting into with your speech. And of course, with your topic and information overload and statistics about COVID or statistics about this smoke, I think plenty of us have been taking a look at the various websites and the particle counts and such. It's a topic that we can all relate to and that we are all familiar with. And something I believe, Mary, you've even spoken about briefly before, and that is how you can overload yourself with this information. And is it really that healthy or not? Excuse me. Pilot, quiet. And it's not. I liked, and I got a chuckle, and I think most folks did here, when you talked about Seattle's air quality. And I didn't realize that at one point Seattle had actually passed us to some degree. And I think the way that you put it was how you were in a way offended by like that, like how dare they take something away from us. That was certainly funny and brought some humor to an otherwise, well, somewhat dark topic. Again, these things that we aren't really enjoying all so much. You talked briefly about how in your journaling and looking at these various sites, the very far left and the very far right. And I wasn't exactly sure where you were going to go with that. I thought it might get somewhat dark, but it didn't. And that was pretty good. Moving on to the conclusion. And I like your intro and I like your transition into the body. I thought the conclusion, which was a touch abrupt. And one of the things that, again, in the email that you asked me to comment on is just the cohesiveness of the speech, because you said this was one that you were going to wing a little bit more and not prepare for as much. And the conclusion was okay, but as you look back in the video, you'll see that it wasn't as smooth as some of the language that you've had in the past. You had some pauses in between some of your words. You didn't add fillers though, which I thought was great, but there was some pauses. It's about the only opportunity for improvement that I can suggest for you there. Overall, again, I thought it was a good speech. I like your body language. I like the fact that you stood up and presented it to us, and overall a good job. Thank you. Back to you, Lloyd.
Thank you, Ron. Our second evaluator evaluating Jackie's speech is Pat Whitfield. So Pat.
Well, overall, what a very enjoyable speech that went on for a long time. When you're talking 10 to 15 minutes, that's a heck of a long time. You had lots of personality, vocal variety, a rich repertoire of facial expressions. Your professionalism was commendable in your ability to handle those of us who were assigned to interrupting you. Because what you did is you took for each one of us who interrupted you, the person's comments and incorporated it into your speech. You did that with a significant amount of elegance. It's especially interesting how you were able to project considerable energy since it's really the middle of the night in the UK right now. And you played a bit with accents. You've done that before in other speeches of yours, and you've got that British accent down very nicely. Your conclusion also was very sound. It tied everything together. Overall, a really lengthy, challenging, interesting, engaging speech about a life experience. You might want to work on, we're used to seeing you standing up, and I'm sure that you're getting used to your new setting. So in future speeches, it would be nice to have you go back to standing up so that we could see more of your hand gestures, as they were kind of limited to just here around your face. They were perfectly appropriate, but it would have been nice to have the full body image of Jackie. To challenge yourself, all I can say, girl, is keep everything falling into place and staying awake and alert at 1 a.m. in the UK. Good job.
Thank you, Pat. Now we'll move into, I guess, what you would call the mechanical or operational parts of the evaluation. First of all, Joyce, could we have our timers report, please?
I had to unmute myself. Yes, I will give you the report. Let's start with the prepared speeches. Mary, your speech time requirement was 5 to 7 minutes. Your actual time was 7 minutes and 13 seconds. I enjoyed the speech, so I didn't mind. Jackie, your speech time requirement was 13 to 15 minutes. Your actual time was 14 minutes and 16 seconds. The evaluations. Ron, your evaluation took 3 minutes and 26 seconds. Pat, your evaluation took 2 minutes and 2 seconds. Table topics. Vicky, you had 1 minute and 16 seconds. Ron, 1 minute and 37 seconds. Steve, 45 seconds. Dean, 1 minute, 12 seconds. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Joyce. Next, we have our grammarian for the evening, Dean. So Dean, how did we do?
Everybody did really well. For the word of the day, I heard Mary use it once, Jackie used it once, and I heard Steve use it twice. I hope I didn't miss anybody. As for grammar, I didn't note any abuses of the grammar. I did note some phrases that I really liked. Mary talked about a rich trove. She used the word ennui. And we're at the top of the totem pole, which I thought was an interesting visual analogy. And Jackie, I liked some of your words, scannable. Probably my favorite was, yes, suck it, Chris. But that's just me. And I also liked, everything was falling into place and I fell into bed. That concludes my grammarian report.
Thank you, Dean. Finally, we have our awe counter for the day, Vicki Chatterton. Vicki.
Oh, thank you. Well, you were right in skipping me because we really didn't have filler words except for mine that when I was trying to explain my role. Jackie, you did a great job having such a long speech and no filler words. So great job. And I get so involved with everybody's topic and when they're speaking that sometimes I forget that I'm supposed to be paying attention to those also. So I may have missed a few, but I was really trying to listen and pay attention to those filler words. Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, Vicki. For general evaluation of the meeting, I think we did a pretty good job. We had obviously several people who were not able to be here tonight, so we really were kind of tightly wound up in terms of organization. We pulled it off. We will finish on time. We started on time. Rachel, I assume by the look on your face, I could see you were surprised to hear that the interruption interrupters of Jackie's speech were assigned. That never happens in real Toastmasters speeches, ever. I mean, nobody would do that. You'd get tossed out. But the purpose of her speech was to deal with a difficult audience. And so there were, all of the people who interrupted were assigned to do so. But you looked really startled when Pat mentioned that. I thought what else was I going to mention? Yeah, it couldn't have been that important because I don't remember it. We do need to vote on the outstanding speaker of the day. So if you would send that to me in the chat box, I will tally them up. And in the meantime, I will turn the meeting back over to our president, Ian.
Thanks, Lloyd. Great evaluation, everybody, tonight of our meeting, and excellent speech evaluations. I would like to apologize to both Pat and Ron. I was just going down my list of people to ask questions to. I didn't look to notice that you guys were both doing speech evaluations, and I called on you for table topics. So I hope that didn't interrupt your ability to fully evaluate those speeches in any way. At this point, Lloyd, is there anything from the VP or your, I guess, club coach role that you'd like to discuss?
I'll just mention that you, Ian, have you registered for that district event that I sent the email up about on the 23rd of September?
I don't believe I have.
Okay, I'll send that link again to you tomorrow. I heard from Kelly Cordell and she did register, and Jackie and I have done it, so we've got it pretty much covered. It's really important to get a quorum for that meeting, and registering is one way to go ahead and do that. So I'll send you the link tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, I remember reading the first email, and I just don't recall if I did or not.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I'll definitely get it if not.
Okay, and I'll ask Rachel whether you have any questions about what you saw tonight.
Hi, guys. I did have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. Here, just a second. I got to use my mom voice just to... Okay, here we go. They're leaving. So the question that I had was, where are the standards that you use to evaluate speeches? Because I thought it was really wonderful feedback, but it's got to be based on some sort of criteria, I'm imagining. Where do you find that?
Yes, the projects themselves that you saw tonight, and all of the speech projects, are from a curriculum called Pathways. And the Pathways materials contain the set of evaluation criteria that the evaluators use. So they vary somewhat. There are obviously some general things that people look for in any kind of speech, but there are particular things as well. So yeah, you're right. They come from somewhere. They're not just pulled out of the air. And as you can see, probably, I hope, the evaluations, there's a difference between evaluation and grading, and these were evaluations. They were analysis based on Pat and Ron's personal opinions. And that's the idea, is to get the personal opinions of the evaluators. So there's no right or wrong. But the idea is that the basic Toastmasters curriculum is guided practice coupled with individualized feedback. And the theory is that with time, then you become more competent and more comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
We hope you come back for another meeting. Speaker of the evening, let me count them up here quickly. Whoa, this is close. It is by one vote, Jackie. So congratulations, Jackie. Finally, one interesting thing, this is a totally random thing that struck me as fascinating, but maybe that's just me. When I upload the video of the meeting, Vicki will send me the link and I'll upload the video of the meeting tomorrow. It goes to our club YouTube channel, then you guys all get the link, and there's a thumbnail that you click on for the video because there are a whole bunch of them online. And the question is, where does that thumbnail come from? And I always assumed, okay, it'd be probably the first person who appeared in the video on screen. Well, in 7 of the last 12 meetings, it's been Mary. And she was not the first person on screen. it seems to reach into the videos, pick Mary out and make her the thumbnail for all of them. And so, as I told Mary, she should probably get an agent and negotiate with YouTube for royalties the way things are going. But I mean, I'm eagerly awaiting to see whether you make it again tomorrow after I upload the video. Okay, so now I better turn it back over. Back over to the president for final remarks. So that sounds portentous.
Thanks, Lloyd. We are actually at our time for the evening, so I will just thank Rachel for coming by. And as Lloyd said, I hope you come back and join us again. Is there anybody else that has any questions before we sign off tonight?
Thanks for letting me join you from England.
Pleasure.
Yep. And thanks for